İçinde bulunduğumuz sektör, çalıştığımız kurumlar ve uzmanlık alanlarımız itibarıyla en iyi bizler biliyoruz ki günümüz ekonomisinin yeni para birimi olan veri, farklı teknolojilere sahip yeni nesil müşteriler ile iletişim kurabilmemiz için en önemli kurumsal varlıkların başında gelmektedir. Bu kurumsal varlığı çığır açan iş sonuçlarına dönüştürebilmek için yeni nesil teknolojilerden faydalanmak kaçınılmaz olmuştur. Bugün verinin gerçek potansiyelini ortaya koyan, dünya genelinde 5000'den fazla kurumun güvendiği, dünyanın veri entegrasyonu lideri Informatica'nın değerli yöneticilerinin konuşmalarını dinleyecek ve çok faydalı bilgiler edineceğiz. Bu noktada bizleri mutlu eden iki gelişmeyi sizlerle paylaşmak istiyorum. Birincisi, geçtiğimiz yıl KOMTAŞ Bilgi Yönetimi, Informatica Network'ü içerisinde dünya genelinde en başarılı küresel iş ortağı ilan edildi. İkincisi, Informatica, EMEA Partner Forum toplantısını bu yıl İstanbul'da düzenliyor. KOMTAŞ Bilgi Yönetimi'nin göstermiş olduğu başarıların bu şekilde olumlu geri dönüşleri olmasından gurur duyuyoruz. 2 ve 3 Temmuz tarihlerinde yine bu otelde gerçekleşecek bir iç iletişim toplantısı olan Informatica EMEA Partner Forum nedeniyle İstanbul'da bulunan Informatica'nın üst düzey yöneticileriyle arzu edeceğiniz konu bazlı birebir toplantılar organize etmekten memnuniyet duyarız. Şimdi izninizle ilk konuşmacımızı anons etmek istiyorum. Yeni Nesil Veri Entegrasyonu başlıklı sunumuyla organizasyonların veri entegrasyonunu kilit bir iş sürecinden bir projeye nasıl dönüştüreceklerini ve bu dönüşümün verinin gerçek potansiyelini açığa çıkarmak için organizasyonlara nasıl yardımcı olacağını ortaya koyacaktır. Informatica EMEA Bölge Operasyonları Kıdemli Başkan Yardımcısı Charles Reis'i kürsüye davet ediyorum. Dear Charles, stage is yours.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay at the back? Yes? Okay. It's a pleasure to be back in your country and to be speaking to you this morning. In the half an hour I have with you, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the innovations that Informatica are making in the data integration space and how we see the world changing a little bit. And it's on that point I'm going to start. The winners in each of your industries that you work in will be those that manage to maximize the potential of information in this age. And the good news is there is a huge opportunity. The amount of data and information available, which you can use to change the future of your organizations, is growing very rapidly. The bad news is it's becoming extremely complicated to manage. I'm going to take a little bit of a step back with my first slide. This is a picture of a black hole. At the center of a black hole is a point where you have infinite density and zero volume. It's called a singularity. Beyond the point of singularity is the point at which we have no comprehension of what exists. A point where beyond zero volume and infinite density, we can't understand what can possibly exist at that point. It's very handy that we call it a black hole because we give it a name and then we can assume that we don't need to work out anything about what happens at that point. Now there is a theory that we are entering a new singularity, a technological singularity, where technology is changing the way our lives work and run to an extent that a human is unable to comprehend how it operates unaided. If you think of your children or even your grandparents or your great-grandparents and the difference in the way that the world operates for those people, children, 3-year-old children have an automatic ability to swipe screens that my grandparents would not have understood. If we think about how the life has changed, how data interacts with people, social media, my friends' children spend all of their time texting and on social media every day, a concept of communication which was alien to us 20 or 30 years ago. And there's going to come a point where we hit a singularity, where even those of us in the room will not be able to understand how the world is now functioning. Some small examples of things that really are changing the way business operates in this new world. Utility companies. Utility companies are using information and data from the weather, from consumption information as to how people are using data to maximize their profits, but also become more efficient with the way electricity and grid management operates. General Electric, who make turbines on planes, amongst many other things, they collect about 10 terabytes of data on every single flight that operates. Now, that data is used in real time to make the flight more efficient, ensure that they cut cost on aviation fuel, but also to send information back so that maintenance crews are ready immediately with any signs of something that needs to be fixed on the airplane when they land. Making sure that, A, we avoid accidents, and B, that the uptime of their planes is maximized. I think the Wright brothers, when they started off only 100 years ago, would not possibly comprehend how aviation is transformed. The one that probably affects us all individually is the way that retail is changing, the endless aisle. We have choices in online stores of millions of products, not 1,000 products or 10,000 products, but millions of products. Websites like Alibaba and Amazon, eBay, providing a selection and a choice unimaginable 10 years ago. But this has come at a cost, and it's going to come at a cost to everybody in the room as we try to take advantage of it. So I'm going to do a little bit of a history lesson. You can't see this at the back probably very clearly. I will talk through it, and the slides will be available to you to look at. But this talks through the generations of computing. The first generation of computing, 60s and 70s, really was there to help automate some back office applications like finance and accounting. It was pretty much dominated by IBM. In fact, the competition to IBM was known as the Seven Dwarfs, and nobody now, I guess, in the room can really name who those 7 organizations were. The number of variations of computing complexity was quite small, maybe hundreds, tens, hundreds of different combinations of computing. The second generation was more about automating front office applications, providing value to sales and marketing. With this, we had new leaders in IT. From a client side, Microsoft and Intel. From a server side, Oracle. And from a client-server application side, SAP. Now we're getting a little bit more complicated. The combinations of computing are growing to the thousands. The third generation was really about providing e-commerce, being able to now transact and utilize the internet in the era of the web. Pioneers in this space, including Netscape and Sun. Sun claimed to be the .in .com. And those of you that know Sun now know that they are the .in Oracle.com. We've got Amazon, who really brought around a big change in online retailing and multi-channel commerce. However, now we're getting even more complicated. As we get into the fourth generation of computing, we're now automating line of business processes which were too complicated to automate previously. Pioneers in the public cloud space, Salesforce.com, Amazon Web Services, virtualization of computing, companies like VMware. The fifth generation of computing really took a bold move away from pure transactional operation to social interaction, the way that people communicate with each other. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. 1 billion people all signed up together in various groups, indicating who they like the most and who they don't like, and what their preferences are. Talking about organizations, talking about themselves and what they like to do. Now we're getting into an area of volume of data that dwarfs any of the previous eras. We've got 10 to the 9, hundreds of billions of trillions of combinations of computing that we have to manage and support. So what's next? The 6th generation. What's going to happen next? I don't like the phrase, but the Internet of Things is what a lot of people are referring to, or machine data. And it's this era that's going to transform the everyday life of each and every one of us. This is the era where sensors will be on our bodies to be able to help predict if we're going to have a heart attack and tell us to go to the doctors. It's already being used to try and predict depression in people in advance. So that typically, if you're on diabetes, as an example, and you need to ensure that you take your insulin, the majority of people who forget to take their insulin are those that are depressed. This preempts and understands if you're about to get depressed and tells your friends to keep an eye on you, make sure you take your insulin. There will be sensors in cars which provide automatic braking if we think there's going to be a collision. They will also ensure that we know exactly when to maintain our vehicles. The volume of data that's going to come from machine data or the Internet of Things is going to be phenomenal. We don't know how big yet. We don't know how quickly the adoption will take place. But the adoption will take place, and many of you, even through your smartphone, can already monitor your heart rate and sleeping patterns. We'll be able to automatically link our consumption of coffee from the local coffee shop straight through to our tax return to try and claim the VAT back on how much coffee we're drinking. This amount of data is going to truly put into perspective of what we have now as being extremely small. We've hardly touched the surface, but this is some way off, potentially. However, there are a couple of things that really then become an issue for all of us. If I take the look at this from a developer's perspective, back in the 60s and 70s, a developer may have had to know COBOL, maybe a bit about IMS as a database. Not so hard. As we move through to the next generation, now we've got Unix. Obviously, there was going to be one Unix, it's open source, but that's not entirely true. Solaris, HPUX, AIX, 3 variants of something that's now open source. Relational databases, Oracle, Microsoft, multiple places and ways in which to store the information. We're having to code now in C, in Visual Basic, in SQL. Move on to the next generation, the web generation. Now we've got Java, JavaScript, and as we progress more into more modern languages of Perl, C#. We then move on to the cloud era. Now we're having to have developers who understand Perl and Pig and Hive as we move into the social area and running on Hadoop. Many, many different languages for a developer to try and understand and work with every single day. It would be easy if each organization moved from one era to the next. But that isn't the case. Large organizations have a selection of all of these eras still in place, which means as far as managing the infrastructure and the development of the code, it's becoming extremely complex and expensive. From an operations point of view, it gets no easier. So in the beginning, probably had MVS. OS 360 was all that you needed from an operations standpoint to be able to manage. Again, move that ahead, you've now got multiple operating systems. Linux, and multiple versions of Linux, same thing that happened with Unix. You're looking after WebSphere as far as being able to manage your web infrastructure. Cloud applications, now you've got to manage applications which aren't just on-premise, but are also off-premise. Databases which were previously relational, now becoming NoSQL databases like MongoDB, Hadoop data clusters. Who knows what the Internet of Things is going to bring as an additional level of complexity? How do you optimize for an infrastructure that is that complicated? Because the purpose of these generations wasn't to make life difficult. The purpose of these generations was to add value, the top section, to provide new ways of doing business. In order to unleash the potential of the value that we're bringing through each of these innovations, we have to understand and be able to handle all of the disruption, the risk, and the cost to the organizations of managing that complex infrastructure. We need to be able to harness that change. If we can't harness the change, you will spend 95% of your time and budgets just keeping the lights on. There'll be very little chance and very little money left aside to add value, to innovate. Informatica recently announced our new virtual data machine. Our virtual data machine abstracts the complexity of managing that infrastructure over 5 or 6 generations so that the organization can utilize the Informatica platform to add value through understanding your data and turning that information potential into real value. Simply put, Vibe enables you to map once. You heard just now about how data integration can be used for many different aspects of moving data around your environments, to deploy anywhere. Those of you familiar with Java, who you may liken this to Java, which was develop once, deploy anywhere. Vibe is that version of Java for data management. As an example, if you are long-term users of Informatica software, data integration mappings from one source to one target written 15 years ago can today be run natively on a Hadoop cluster with absolutely no change to any code whatsoever. So that's mappings written 10 years before Hadoop was invented. And that's the power of using a platform like Vibe, being able to have an abstraction which helps you get to market quicker with your innovation. Because when you've now taken the complexity away, and now you have some time, you can utilize the platform for adding value and solving critical problems, which your businesses will come across. These aren't issues. Every company in the world wants to become more agile, wants to make better decisions. And we have solutions which help you do just that. But you can't do it if the entire time you're concerned with how your infrastructure looks. What does it actually mean from a set of components? Well, the virtual data machine underpins every one of Informatica's solutions. Like I say, it's the abstraction layer, the runtime engine, which takes away your need to understand where data comes from. All you need to know now is what it means. The data integration platform that sits on top, known as Power Center for those of you that have our products. This enables you to get a holistic, a complete view of data, access to information wherever it resides. Data quality components enable you to trust that data, to clean it, and apply rules to it. Information lifecycle then enables you to secure it, so that only people allowed to see the information actually are enabled to see it. And this services layer provides clean, trustworthy, complete information through to the Informatica solutions which sit on top. I'm going to talk about a couple of these solutions shortly. During today, you will hear some more information on specific areas. Information exchange enables you to partner with other organizations to share information, both social and transactional information. Master data management enables you to put an authoritative view on specific information, for instance, a person or a customer or a product. And infrastructure services, on the right, enable real-time messaging with very low latency to get data in a timely fashion, and complex event processing to make it actionable. So if a number of triggers happen within your data? How do people get to know about that very quickly in order to make decisions and action it? So, a couple of innovations that we're working on. Information potential has often been, or rather data is often likened to oil, and there are two ways to look at that. Big data, like big oil, big profits, needs to be excavated, refined, and then used. That's one school of thought. The other way is that actually data is the ultimate renewable source. It's created every single day. So we need to cultivate it, and we need to be able to use that renewable source of energy, that renewable source of data to make decisions in a better way. I'm going to give you a few examples which relate to those business imperatives I showed you on a previous slide. First one is around improved decisions. Western Union, many will know Western Union, they have 500,000 buildings that they use for people to walk in and collect money, transfer money around the world. They're changing their entire business model, as you would expect, to become more digital. To do that, they've got a huge challenge ahead of them on how do they understand and utilize large amounts of information to do analytics in a very different way using Hadoop. Analytics itself is also changing. We're not in the BI space, but there are now at least 6 different ways of doing analytics that there weren't 5 years ago. The traditional way of data warehousing and bringing information together and sticking a business intelligence reporting tool on top. We have in-memory databases now, like MongoDB. We have agile BI, companies like ClickTech and Tableau, that are really taking the virtualization of data to the next level as far as virtualizing and delivering the front end of information in real time. Hadoop for massive number crunching. However you look at your analytics delivery, however you're intending to do analytics, there's one thing which is fundamental, and that is the data that comes into those analytics engines needs to be clean, needs to be complete, you need to be able to trust it. It needs to be delivered to the right people at the right time. The Informatica platform, again, abstracts whatever your chosen method of doing business intelligence, which will change. You will have areas of your business that decide to buy departmental dashboarding for their own needs. Ultimately, somebody has to start to control this. As you move in away from traditional business intelligence to predictive analytics, you also need to have some, as well as real-time information, you need to have some complex processing, applying rules, what-if analysis. The next stage of this is prescriptive analytics, which is the new flavor that people are expecting to happen in the next 2 or 3 years. And this is where you actually take the human out altogether. Not only do you analyze the past, predict the future, but then you prescribe a resolution. And that work then gets undertaken by the next automated process. So linking in with your whole BPM processes to analyze, clean, predict, and action data. I don't know if that means we're all going to be out of a job at some point, but I guess what it does suggest is we have to be absolutely sure that whatever we're building into these systems is based on fundamental truths in the information that's within. My second example is around operational efficiency. Many organizations today, nearly all organizations, want to be more efficient to save money. Over time, the diagram I showed you before can lead to an example like in L'Oreal. They have 19 SAP hubs. Are there any SAP users in the audience? A couple. Managing one SAP hub is quite a mission. Managing 19 hubs, all with different models. Not entirely different, but dissimilar enough to make this a headache, is A, extremely complex, and B, extremely expensive. So L'Oreal are looking at consolidating over time their SAP hubs. But in the meantime, they need to ensure that they can get all of the data that they need to make decisions. Typically, they would transform and move data in this fashion, where you will go to one source and create a link from the source to the target. Each time you have to go to one of these sources, you have to go and, if it's a mainframe, get access and make sure that the appropriate resources are available. Probably fill in some governance process to get access to that data, move the data across, test it, complete it. Then something changes and you have to work out what's changed in this complex infrastructure. Informatica have launched the Data Integration Hub. This is effectively a publish and subscribe of specific data streams or data that people are specifically interested in, subjects if you like, whereby people who own that data on the source publish the data in a clean format. They'll clean it, they may mask it if it's sensitive data, and deliver it so that downstream applications can subscribe to that. They can always then ensure that they're getting the most up-to-date version of that data, and they never, whenever you onboard a new application at this end, you don't have to then go and reinvent how you move information between applications. My third example is customer centricity. I talked a little bit before about getting a single view of a person or a customer. The single view of customer is something many people have talked about and typically justified a data warehouse around. Getting a single view of a customer in real time for all of their transactional and social information is extremely difficult. Merrill Lynch have a number of thousands of financial advisors who have clients, and they go to see each of those clients. They spend 30% of their time collecting the information about that client prior to going to see them in order to be able to cross-sell and upsell to them. They implemented a master data management solution to give an authoritative combined view of everything about that customer. Whether they were, what products they were buying, what locations they're in, support requests, anything to do with that customer in the hundreds of systems that they had was brought together and then delivered via mobile device because they're on the road most of the time. Informatica's multi-domain MDM solution, which also now has the ability to understand and publish product information through an acquisition that we made over the last 12 months, a company called Hyla Software, to really provide that deep hierarchical understanding of a single entity. What do I really mean by hierarchical? It's very nice for me to say these long words. But if you look at me as an individual, knowing everything about me also means knowing everything about my wife and my family, my friends, how they interact. Telco companies are using this sort of information to preempt people leaving their network. For instance, if I have a group of people, friends and family that I call often, and I'm about to leave as a subscriber from your telco company, it would be very good for the organization to ensure that my friends and family don't follow suit, to automatically give them offers to keep them to stay. Being able to, in real time, utilize that sort of information, which is gathered from many, many systems, is where Informatica's MDM solution, and we have a session on that later as well, can really help you get an authoritative view of specific information from many systems. My final example is about modernization. Specifically, talking about cloud and hybrid IT. Actelion is a pharmaceutical company. They specialize in trying to solve terminal diseases for which there is no current cure. It's a very highly regulated environment, as you can imagine. They have information, line of business information held in both off and on-premise systems, like PeopleSoft, like Salesforce, as well as all of their R&D systems. They have drug trials that are ongoing. And again, ensuring that you get fully auditable data, irrespective of where that information is critical. The cloud, whilst providing us with many benefits of being able to outsource the operational aspects of an application, provides us with challenges on both security, access and delivery of data, both in a timely way, and in a way because we don't control those applications. Informatica's cloud enables hybrid IT. It's built on exactly the same Vibe platform. So whether you are running Salesforce.com in a private cloud, or whether you are running on SAP and want to move to Salesforce.com, the Informatica Cloud Platform enables you to do that, again, without having to rewrite all of your data integration and data quality rules that you've built up over many years. So what does this really mean? It really means that we're providing a platform which future-proofs whatever decision and direction you're going to take. Whether you're running cloud right now, or not, I would say within 10 years we'll all be running cloud applications. I was a skeptic 5 years ago when we first brought our cloud offering to market. To me, the area of data security was such a big issue that I thought organizations are never going to put their information out on somebody else's servers. But data security isn't really about whether you can secure a server off or on-premise. Data security is about encryption and tokenization. Are you giving the right people who really don't want to break the law access to the right data? Is it easy for somebody to walk away with a laptop on which they downloaded Excel? That's where data security has the biggest issues. It doesn't have issues within cloud so much. So this is going to happen, and it's not going to happen overnight. We're not going to all move to cloud. So there will be this need for both on-premise and on-premise merging and control of data. And that's the hybrid IT solution through Informatica Cloud. So I want to just summarize again. I talked about two specific areas. One area was, how do we get value from our data? How can we utilize that data to ensure people making decisions have got clean, trustworthy data at the right time? And how do we understand that data to be able to make those decisions? The Informatica platform provides that. However, the complexities of our infrastructure, the complexities of developing the data, and the systems we've built up over many, many years are making it hard for that to be realized. And the virtual data machine supplied through Informatica's core products, called Vibe, is that abstraction layer which enables you to free up your time and resources to work on adding value to the business and putting the potential to work. This sounds great. It's my last complete slide. I've added this slide into the presentation. You can tell I've added it because it's the wrong color, and I'll get into trouble from those people who tell me what color slides should be. But I've added this specifically because I don't want anybody to come away thinking, oh, well, that's easy. We just need to get all of the Informatica platform, put Vibe on, and we have no issues. I'm talking about one component of three components which are extremely important to enable this to work in your organizations. The first is, and the most important, is the structure, the organization and the buy-in. Who are your data stewards or data owners? It's a poison chalice. Nobody wants to say, yes, please, I'd like to be the data owner in the organization for all customer data. You've got to get executive buy-in to do that, or you will never be successful in your job. This is a fundamental sticking point in many organizations. We've put in place integration competency centers. We've put in place many data governance programs ourselves and with our partners to help you. There are many ways of doing it, though. There is no one answer. And it's your organizational needs which will define how you can structure this to be successful. And the second part then is processes, business processes around data and information, which people need to adhere to in order for you to make this successful. If you don't have those two components, you're in danger of having chaos on an even greater scale. And it's working with ourselves, working with KOMTAŞ and our other partners who really are experts in understanding how data governance works, understanding how you can help structure your organization to take advantage of the Informatica platform. So we've only solved 1/3 of the problem, but now that's only 2/3 of an issue that you have to look at yourselves. You will hear more about this today. There's some more information on our website specifically about Vibe and the platform and how we can help put potential to work in many different ways. Again, you will receive this copy of the slide, so you don't have to write down the URL. But I want to thank you again for your time listening to me. I hope it's put a seed of thought into your head as to how are you going to manage the complexities of your infrastructure. If your organizations buy another company, if you go through some mergers and acquisitions, that's pretty much out of your control as to what it is you're acquiring as far as infrastructure goes. I guarantee it will be different to that which you're running today. Being able to understand and bring on board those organizations quickly will certainly give you an advantage that your competitors will not have. Thank you again. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And I look forward to talking with many of you and working with you as partners over the coming days, weeks, months, and years. Thank you.